Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Energy Bites. John Calfan here with my wonderful co-host, Bobby Nealon.
What's good?
You're doing good today, Bobby?
Awesome.
Today, we've got John Archer, the Global Edge Hardware Partner Manager at Red Hat. Appreciate you coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
A little closer.
A little closer.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me
Yeah.
better? Okay.
No, it's honestly mostly from the other microphones picking you up, not the main one, but it feels weird speaking directly into this giant thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, but closer is better. I mean,
All right. I'm going to wear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for coming today, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice meeting you guys, and I know we've had one conversation before, and really like talking to you guys. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And really enjoy the podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
It's needed in this space.
Thanks. It's always good to feel your
That's
hypothesis
twice we got some good feedback.
is validated. So
Yes.
if you like the podcast, perfect timing. Go like and subscribe. Give us some feedback. Give us 5 stars if you're listening. We'd appreciate it. John, tell us about yourself. How'd you get into energy tech? Where are you from? Kind of how'd you get to Red Hat?
Well, I haven't gone very far, so it's because we're here near the Cannon, and so our office we have a Intelligent Edge Solution Center here at the Cannon, conjoined with Chevron. And,
sweet.
But I went to high school right down the road here at Springwoods, so it doesn't feel like I went anywhere at all. But you grew up in Houston, you do energy, right? So,
yeah.
Or medical, maybe a little bit, but maybe a little material science if you're cool. But I've been working in energy since I was 19 in some ways.
Okay.
If I go back to my Stewart Title days when I was a kid, I was a file clerk. First time I actually coded anything was at Stewart Title, where we were using VisiCalc and
I was going to say, what'd you code in?
Yeah, VisiCalc DBase were the first things where I got paid to code.
Yeah.
But the cartridges on an Atari as a kid, on a 400 was the first thing I coded.
That's awesome.
Like a basic cartridge.
Yeah.
And
It's like, I mean, how do you even do that? I mean,
I have no clue.
Like, what did that even look like?
To code
you
have to have like a cartridge reader?
Yeah, so the actual
tied to
computer had a cartridge insert for like games, but then they started building like basic Fortran, Pascal cartridges you could plug in there, and you'd write to your little floppy or actually cassette too, right? And I'd get all the magazines. There was like a couple different Atari magazines back there with code. One of the projects I first did was to build a weather device that you could hook up to the Atari computer. So a buddy of mine, this is like in junior high, and we built a thing to pull down weather data and present it. And we thought we'd do this for like fishing guides. The problem is you need to buy an Atari computer. So it was a bad plan. But that was our big idea where in 7th grade
that's awesome.
We could pull down the weather data over the air.
I mean, that's wild. Pretty innovative, I assume, running it on an Atari, so giving you a time frame of when that
it taught me. That's how I learned to solder too. So the first one was solder, a little device you plug into the serial COM port.
That's my that's honestly my favorite thing about this podcast is just there isn't a common path for pretty much anyone that we've had on here, right? Like everyone got exposed to tech in their own different way, and a lot of it isn't even
older,
right? Through direct tech, right? It's like. Well, I was interested in MySpace, so I started coding MySpace pages, and then I got into code and I learned HTML, and then it waterfalls. Or like my story is at the same time I was working at a data company, I was also in a fantasy football league with all my friends back home, and I wanted bragging rights.
So you had those problems too,
right? So I started, messing around with APIs.
At one point, I was commissioned like 8 leagues, so I'm down to 2.
How do you factor in injuries? Because that's destroying me right now.
Yeah. So you had Chubb, is what I'm hearing.
My wife had him, but
there were a bunch this last week.
Yeah, it was basically every receiver I had something. Like I drafted Cooper Cup, and
Cup was hurt off the bat. You didn't do your homework, man. So.
Yeah, I really didn't. Okay. Yeah, to his point, like I showed up, I'm like, guess I'm just flying blind.
Went to FF Today, downloaded the top 100 or whatever. So.
Yeah, for a data person, I have not yet done what he did. So.
Well, I really like the football guys one. If you want to use that one,
okay.
Yeah, they have good.
They do have some
good data.
Okay,
they've curated their data.
Right, very nice.
Fantasy football is tricky because the draft stuff is all it's not. There's pretty much no data behind it other than just the player's historic data. But that player might be on a completely different team with a different offense and a different head coach and a different.
Showing where data science gaps live.
So it's
real time events are hard to represent with data science algorithms.
speaking of that, shout out to Amazon. I watched their, I don't even remember what the name of the broadcast is, but it's their secondary broadcast that they stream on Prime with their computer vision and analytics running on
That's
top
amazing.
of it. It's pretty slick. It highlights all the players. It tells you their speed. It shows you the routes they run. It predicts blitzes and stuff like that. It's pretty slick.
Let's wait till their contracts are tied to the analytics.
Yeah.
So I guess all you janking it out there, you just got docked pay.
Yeah. No, I can't wait till that. If I'm hoping, please make that API available because it would make my analytics really interesting. Anyway, coming back. So kind of how did you get to where you're at Red Hat today? What?
Yeah. So, I started a Houston Java users group here a long time ago. Oh, I'll go way back. I was HAL PC guy for old school Houston guys, Houston Area League PC users. I was a Delphi user for a long time. I probably coded more applications in Delphi, Borland Delphi platform. Group to SQL Windows, Power Builder, all that kind of stuff. And then when Java came out, I became a huge Java nerd. And started the HJUG here in town, which is still going and being run by my buddy Jim. He's doing a good job with it. But I haven't really coded Java in quite some time. We have Quarkus at Red Hat, which is a great platform for optimizing Java on containers. And but overall, what we've been doing is mostly Python, Julia, R type of content when it comes to coding, and now a little bit of Rust. Rust and WebAssembly is kind of like the hot newness.
The new thing.
And running it on microcontrollers is something we've been looking at. There's a buddy of mine here at Red Hat over in Germany who's built a project called Drogue IoT, and it's an attempt to containerize workloads on microcontrollers.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
That's insane.
Yeah. The stuff that's coming down the pipe on the edge side and the PLC industrial automation stuff is really, really exciting in my opinion.
Nubix IO is a leader there too. So Jason Shepard, formerly of Dell, is running that thing, and they've got a good head start on this too.
If we could just get the software companies to containerize all of their stuff, we'd be doing better.
There's what's the Malcolm Gladwell quote? The future's here is not widely distributed.
Right.
Evenly distributed. So,
for sure.
But that's the case with a lot of things. There's the container stuff's been around a while. If we go back to like Sun, right, and process jails and all that stuff, or even LPARs on mainframes, the idea has been there for a long time.
Right.
But how you break up the resources of the computer, containers is now the state of the art for how to do that. I can get the best utilization of my hardware by containerizing the stuff.
So this is a perfect opportunity for you to explain to people kind of the old way with virtual machines and kind of how.
Well, even I see there's a step in between of like virtual machines, Docker, and then where y'all at too. I mean,
so
start like high level.
Yeah, I don't know how deep to go here.
We can start high level and then we'll prod you for questions to get into it.
So I use VMware like 99, right? To like Phoenix biosimulation, how they kind of started. And I was running like a Kix region on an image, right? Great use case, loved VMware back then.
Sure.
But when you build VMware at scale or create all these images, it's a copy of the OS in every image.
Yeah.
So it's using the resources of an OS full stack every time you spin it up. Containers is more like an OO thinking here, where I can reuse the base layers and get better utilization because not every image is really just the deltas of what you need in that container.
Significantly more efficient from a resources perspective, right?
So be able to break up the process and isolate it, process isolation is the core of it. But like what Docker did, which is amazing, was make an API to make it really easy to use. Right. So the registry and the layers and stuff like that. We've come up with some improvements on that called Podman. So Podman.io is the website. And that comes with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and comes with Red Hat Device Edge. But that's now the most secure way. There's some vulnerabilities in Docker, which we can alleviate. And a lot of the other Linux distributions have picked up Podman and they're shipping that now.
Cool.
Docker kind of with Swarm kind of made a misstep back in the day a little bit. And it broke everyone's Kubernetes, and that kind of forced this change.
Yeah.
So OCI format became kind of like a way to keep everyone's nose clean.
Right.
And make sure you don't hurt each other's projects and efforts. But Podman's a way to run containers now. There's a utility to simplify it for new developers called Podman Desktop, which is active development, heavy development right now. And but yeah, Podman ecosystem and our container registries out there can pull from Docker Hub, pull from Quay, and you can get software up and running very quickly with these things.
Yeah.
And then of course we use OpenShift to scale it out and do container orchestration, and that's mostly what I've been doing for since I joined Red Hat, was positioning OpenShift at large super majors here in town and globally as well.
Yeah. So now that we kind of understand virtual machines and containers, tell people about what the next step is, which is OpenShift with Kubernetes.
Yep.
Just a high level. It doesn't have to be super.
We talked a little bit about Kubernetes in one of our second or third episode, but like we haven't talk about high level what that is. I mean, the orchestration of the containers and
so like I said, I was at OSCON in 2015 when I learned really what Kubernetes was.
Mm-hmm.
And Kubernetes early days was Google's way to like run all their systems more efficiently, right? Mm-hmm. And DevOps it and get the best utilization of the hardware. That's a critical thing for a search company at that time,
especially a cloud compute company.
Cloud compute company. You want to utilize our resources at the most economic way we can. So getting from VMs to containers, in some cases, like a 15x to better, 30x better utilization of the same gear. So I could run more or less, right? So OpenShift is a way to do that. We had OpenShift existed before Kubernetes.
Okay.
So OpenShift, the way it is, the version 3 of OpenShift was the first Kube version.
Okay.
And so, going back, Google and Red Hat got together to really invest heavily in the CNCF and build the Kube project. It's one of the largest open source projects in the world.
Okay.
It's usually in the top 3 if you look at commits and all that and the involvement. But Kubernetes has taken over, right? Kubernetes it's the established way to architect things, and
especially cloud.
All the cloud guys have their KSs.
Yep.
OpenShift runs on all the clouds.
Yep.
And clouds you haven't heard of too.
Yeah. And now it's slowly evolving or being pushed out to edge, right? Like that's kind of the future. I mean, my first involvement with edge was with a company that was pitching modular servers that ran Kubernetes. But for the IT manager, the CIO, CTO guys out there listening, what are the benefits? Like, why do I need to move from even just containers to Kubernetes? Or tell me some of the day-to-day benefits of what that brings to me.
Yeah. So like I always tell people, and a lot of people were, with the K3S project, that's where I think a lot of people started trying to do this on the edge, or at least doing a constrained device. Right. And I know your old company was doing stuff like that. And, but the, part of the goals here is to simplify operations, get operational efficiency down, and improve security. That's really the two things. And some of this, if it's a far edge device, to reduce the windshield time. Right. So I want to be able to patch successfully. A lot of these OT environments are locked down and they like set it, forget it. Mm-hmm. But there's vulnerabilities associated with that. If you look back what's happened at like Saudi Aramco with some of their workloads, and there's been a lot of hacks here lately.
Yeah.
The idea that the software is not maintained better is what we're trying to fight against, right? We want to be able to, you want to leverage all these new things. You have to have a way to keep it like a living, breathing thing.
Right.
And so, like edge ops as a pattern, taking the DevOps idea and be able to push your container to where you need it. Sometimes you need to be able to patch the OS without having to go on site.
Right.
Or a guy running around with a USB stick. Right. So we're trying to help that guy not have to run around. So part of how we deploy Red Hat Device Edge, which is an alternative way of deploying RHEL, you get the best 0-day CVE response. And like we're a root on CVE. So if something's happening, we're going to be the first responder, right? In that sense. But what we can do is allow you to patch it automatically. And we have an immutable OS now with this using the RPM OS tree project and using Green Boot. We can create a sequence of how you boot the system that'll auto patch and then push out new versions of the image.
Awesome. Oh.
And it's transactional. So if it's not safe, it rolls back. So
big issue with Edge that I'm glad y'all are solving out of the gate. A lot of people focus on, the on-site hardware and how's it going to integrate and what's it going to run and what software and blah, blah, blah. But then one of the last things that people think about is your CI/CD pipeline for these edge devices. And if they're far edge on a drilling rig or on a frac site or in a SCADA system where you might not always have connectivity, what happens when you go to push an update and connectivity fails in the middle of the update?
Yep.
Does it brick your server, or does it intelligently know that it needs to roll back because the update didn't come through? That's awesome. I didn't realize it had that level of.
We've been working on this for a little while. This came out of the Fedora IoT project. So shout out to Peter Robinson. He's been working nights and weekends and trying to get this thing out the door. We're on Intel and ARM with this stuff now too. And so we're, working a lot on ARM chipsets.
Yep.
We're also working on the new RISC-V coming out stuff. So we're trying to have ubiquity, Switzerland across all these different chipsets with this stuff. But the bulk of our workloads are still Intel with this. And so doing things like TPM2 to commission the box and know that that box that boots up is our box.
Right.
And doing that commissioning step as part of this. Be able to do all encryption at rest. And do the data persistence.
Also incredibly important for Edge.
Network bound Edge, disk encryption is part of this using the Lux project, Clevis and Tang all combined. So we've got this pattern for how to do this right and make this thing a lot more like a Linux appliance, right?
Right.
Versus an OS that an IT guy has to administrate.
Yeah.
So you can come build these appliances. So immutable OS with safe transactional, safe patching, and then also with the ability to do a secure BOM and be able to know everything that's running on that box and make sure it's your stuff. If it's signed containers or signed content, you can validate that. And if it doesn't, you do the check against the TPM. If it fails, kick it out.
Right.
So you can commission and decommission automatically without having someone to babysit it. And so
that's awesome.
It's a big change in how we can do a production edge deployment for critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And not, like everyone's doing monitoring type use cases because they're scared.
Yeah.
But we now have a way to do like closed loop processing in an OT environment with this.
I think we were just having our last guest, Jeff, we were just having a conversation about, oil field, generally speaking, goes in kind of evolutionary steps, right? And so it's, it went from writing things down on a notepad or putting them in a physical notepad or putting them in a spreadsheet to now we're monitoring things with IoT devices and we're streaming the data. Yep. And then the next evolution of that is true closed loop automation where you deploy ML models on the edge and you've got federated learning where they're learning locally and pushing the learnings up to the mother model in the cloud and that model gets accelerated. The learnings of it get accelerated because of that and all of this fun stuff. And so it's really nice to see, like we were talking, it's very easy to kind of see how you get to that point, but there are all these little nuanced things that, we have to figure out and we have to test and ruggedize. People
have, you got to do the hard things first, right? You can't, if you realize you're going to do all this work and you won't pass the digital security team's blessing, you waste a lot of time and money.
For sure.
So you have to solve the, one of my customers has this process for how they check all their, we're not going to go impact things that make us money unless we know it's safe. Right.
Yeah.
So risk first thinking. And so that's what we've been aligned to is make sure you do it right versus do it fast.
Yeah. I think I saw a meme or video on Twitter the other day and it was like cybersecurity, guy watching all the other IT people do stuff. And it was like a guy on a work site and everyone like doing like stupid shit on the, on the work site. And he's like, just like looking around like, what the hell's going on? But I mean, I get it because like I'm more developer first. So like, I just want to make shit work and do it. But then there's a whole other side of it. Like you have to do it securely and have to do it right.
There's different ilities that an OT guy thinks about than an IT guy thinks about. And the IT guy will, and they fight. Right?
Yeah.
These guys are, coming from very different angles. In some case, and I'll say this, there's a lot of OT guys that are brilliant. Right?
Yeah.
But they don't have the same background as an IT guy and they can come in and do things quicker. So management goes, well, that's better. It's faster. It's more agile. Well, the risk associated with doing it agile sometimes is not identified unless you're salty enough to know what the risk is.
Yeah.
And so
it's funny. It gives me more appreciation for my OT guy because his stuff is locked down and he will not budge. Like, no, you're not punching a hole in my network for this. Like,
but the things they want to do this, they have different priorities. And so the IT OT conversion everyone talks about is really about educating each other and enabling each other. And so OT guys can do amazing things. It's just that their tools and their controls are so locked down and so like their big brother stuff on that stuff. it's a difficult environment to work in. And so the idea here, by using open interoperable process controls that ExxonMobil's been very public about with the OPAF and all that, we're working on helping them, right? Trying to get into a place where you can treat your OT assets like IT assets.
Sure.
And be able to do it like in getting the human out of the loop, which it helps with the de-risking of the deployment.
Yeah.
So that's the bigger story we're working on.
I mean, I feel like it's maybe a good kicking off point just to maybe even step back and talk about Red Hat. Like,
for sure.
Because I feel like maybe I'm seeing a theme for the different Red Hat kind of branches, but like just, where Red Hat started is like with a whole Linux distribution, how it compares, on the operating system side. But it seems like, there's a certain mission that you guys serve, that's pretty consistent across the board of like providing like a really robust and, support enterprise grade.
Yeah. We're Red has a huge presence in DoD, public sector, federal type places. Like it's actually a mandate over there to use open source, but do it properly, securely.
Sure.
Right. And so, we have great, I used to do DoD at Oracle, and, that was fun time and all that. But once Red Hat really started sneaking in, it made sense to, join the winning team.
Sure.
So, but overall, Red Hat started over, it's almost 30 years old company.
Okay.
Right. And, it started as, the guy named Bob Young was the founder. And basically, this was building a Linux distribution off of, Torvald's work.
Yep.
And so, fast forward a few years, Red Hat became the enterprise thing. And really, we just started turning off Solaris everywhere.
Okay.
So turning out, the Unix wars were dying, and we cleaned up.
Sure.
Right? That's how Red Hat really grew. And really became a trusted partner for a lot of people that built all these applications on Unix. They needed a place to land.
Yep.
With the Unix distros dying up. So I look at the clouds today, it's kind of like the new Unix wars in some ways.
Yeah.
And proprietary lock-in strategy, particularly around
Sure.
the data. And but overall, it's like it's more about the design of what you're building. So my fight with when I come into a shop, they'll be like, "Oh, we're mono cloud, we're an Azure shop," right?
Yeah.
So, but lo and behold, 2 years later, they're not mono cloud, right? Because they lose the ability to leverage and negotiate if you build to a single cloud, right? And the data strategy with some of these clouds is predatory, particularly if you need to get out of there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not on the ingestion side as much as it is on the
the egression. You whoever your negotiating guys are, Equinix can help solve some problems here.
Yeah, but
still, depending which cloud you're with, your egress cost is.
Yeah, oh look how cheap S3 is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just load it in, right?
Yeah.
So it's the snowball is a one-way trip, right?
Yeah.
The snowmobile, that's a different.
Yeah.
And when they're bringing an 18-wheeler to your facility to move data, watch out.
Yep.
But
no, I mean that's we've had this conversation around APIs and stuff, and it's like people get pissed off when there's not an API or they have to pay for the API. Like we were talking about it because X, Twitter, started locking their stuff down. But it's one of those things where it's like it costs money every time you hit the damn thing.
Yeah.
So yes, it's nice to have, and it's almost come to be an expectation, but you also have to be responsible with it. And I can't tell you how many people we've had on the show where it's like, yeah, we had an API, and then we would have someone that just had like a loop running all of the time, hitting it every however many seconds.
Yep.
And it's just costing us money every time. So we have to put limitations on it and things like that. And it's the same thing with a lot of the cloud stuff, right?
You lose control over your cost.
Yeah.
You're beholden to someone else, ways they want to run your business. Now, data ownership is one of those things. The data ownership is a big part of the business here. But being able to understand how those products are managed on a cloud and you depend upon it, they can make, it's like, well, we're going to turn this one off and we're going to go to this one. Good luck migrating.
Right.
And so, but overall, I think it's understanding part of what OpenShift provides is the ability to run a private cloud anywhere. And it can be on the public cloud or the private cloud.
Right.
And it can address sovereignty concerns. It allows you to choose the data gravity you want. Right. But the idea is I can design things for like, it becomes my asset.
Right.
So where we really struggle in trying to get people to understand is what does cloud native mean?
Right.
Cloud native is more like 12 factors, right? It's how you build things, not what services you turn on that someone else owns.
Yeah.
Right. So your designs should override using those, leverage those services, but build the abstraction layers and mediation layers to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
So your asset is your asset. It can deploy anywhere.
I was going to say, build it
particularly
so
for an ISV. You limit your customer reach by building something that only runs in certain regions.
Yep.
Yeah. What we talked about with like Starseer. I mean, being able to work in like say Saudi or some of these other countries, like it has to be able to run on their soil and like on their servers. Like,
and they're not like particularly anything seismic related. That's never going to cloud.
Yeah.
The first of all, the economics don't work for storage.
Sure.
It's also you pay more to rent things generally.
Yeah.
So over long term, cloud should be leveraged for on demand things.
Yeah.
For burst for temporary things.
Yeah.
Long term stuff.
Especially when you know what the demand is.
Yeah. You need predictability in this. People are using tools like Cloudability and stuff like that to try and do forecasting, but it's hard to dot all the I's and cross all the T's when you have changing demands.
Well,
always.
And I think one of the things that, I saw this firsthand when I was selling Edge is a lot, especially in the energy space, a lot of the primarily Azure, but it's all the cloud. That's their strategy across the board is they'll come in and they'll give these major companies huge amounts of credits to get them locked into the platform. Right. And so it's like, well, hey, the Edge allows you to push a lot more of that load
they buy
down.
Data centers off of you.
Right. But why would I need Edge if I am not going to touch, if I'm only 10% through my credits? And it's like, well, are you going to be like that in a year or 2 years? Like how it's only a matter of time to when you start realizing that there's a cost associated to this. And the more you build on it, the higher that cost is going to get.
Yeah. The stickiness of these things is, the credits is definitely one of their sales strategies. Right?
Yeah.
And we deal with that a lot, but you have to have good leadership inside to realize you have to have longer term thinking.
Yeah.
Because there is no free lunch with this stuff.
Well, and that's why all the big tech companies exist, because they think in the infinite game, not in the short-term game.
Well, it's also because so much job jumping.
Yep.
It's not my problem when I get out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
So ultimately the top leadership needs
or it's cyclical.
The accountability.
Are they willing to pay for Red Hat or not?
Yeah. Well,
because Linux is free, right?
Linux is totally free.
Yeah.
Everyone should use free Linux. So, but
again, the whole no such thing as free lunch. Like you mentioned earlier to us, but maybe you want to talk about where you can like actually save money on the audit side. I think there's stuff like that.
That was we work in utilities as well, and we've come out with ways to solve some tough problems around NERC CIP compliance, right?
Mm.
So you can build your applications for a utilities company. Now, most utilities companies buy their software.
Sure.
There's a few who don't, and that's a growing trend. And we're looking at the projects in the LF Energy, and there's some great things around ADMS and DER, EV charging station projects in there. But there's a lot of pressure to modernize grids.
Sure.
With bespoke solutions, like we're working with GE, for example. They're trying to modernize 40 years of tech debt, right? So, there's all kinds of strategies for these ISVs to leverage these things properly to build a better business for them, right? And having that, going back to that cloud native thing, that needs to be, keep their eyes on the prize with that versus something I can turn on very quickly and get value out of, but then ultimately it's not the best thing for my business long term. So you have to do the work sometimes, but really you just have to focus on enablement and keep your focus, understand how to measure the outcomes you care about against those metrics. And so, a lot of firms out there are looking for quick wins and quick consumable projects. But ultimately, I think it's at a foundational level, you have to have good architecture guys that understand the cost of their choices. And a lot of guys are, it's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard, particularly with the pressures a lot of guys are under quarterly or annually.
People won't bat an eye to spend money on Microsoft or Windows. It maybe kind of makes the comparison, the contrast between like, say, Windows Server and Red Hat, and then you've got Linux. Could it be as simple as someone like they usually do stuff on Ubuntu or their favorite open source Linux? Is it pretty easy to move over to Red Hat?
So like moving workloads on the Red Hat, it's not a big deal. Like actually, like if you're a .NET developer, .NET runs better on Red Hat.
Okay. Like .NET Core stuff.
Yeah, .NET Core stuff. But the windowing stuff's the only thing that doesn't run there. SQL Server runs better on Red Hat. like by far. Like and it's weird. It's like, and Microsoft's cool with this because really they care more about Azure than their Windows revenue these days.
Sure.
And so Microsoft and Red Hat, it's like cats and dogs sleeping together now. We truly are partners. Azure, runs Ansible, it runs OpenShift. Yeah. So ARO is Azure Red Hat OpenShift. And Ansible and RHEL all run there just fine. And so, but yeah, we collaborate more now, and it's good for the industry. It's good if we're not all siloed and trying to fight over everything.
Collaboration, I feel like, regardless of what it is, generally always benefits the masses. And I hope the oil field continues to get more progressive in that.
Oil and gas companies, in particular the guys who write software in this industry, are trying to work better together.
Yeah.
It's hard.
No, I mean, a lot of it is, not to demean anybody that is working on this, but it's almost like the bottom up approach where it's like we're trying to force it into the companies, the industries and stuff. And at some point, once you get up the ladder, someone is, putting a stop to it or throwing up, whatever X, Y, and Z risks and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that it's like, Colin used this analogy the other day. It's like when probably 10, 15 years ago, when we really started getting into the swing of things with the unconventional shale fracs and stuff, how much better would we have been had we shared all of the data and the learnings from all of that stuff? How many reservoirs would we not have completely destroyed the value of because we were putting all these wells too tightly, over fracking them and causing all this communication issue? Like, communication is still a problem, and we've been talking about it for 6, 7, 8 years now.
Well, and we've said before, like, you have really smart people all solving the same problem at different places.
Yeah, there's better reducing your engineering costs by sharing the right thing, particularly if you're gonna, there's negative impact from a water flood event, right? And all this horizontal stuff's all crazy, but yeah, it's overall we could collaborate in a different way and get better operational efficiencies for everybody and safety. And, there's other things about how you socialize some of the equipment and the best practices. I always, this is a little, I'm going to do something here. So fracking came out of an open source mentality, right? Mitchell's started opening up and talking to people, right? Like, we wouldn't be in this whole thing without a different attitude towards collaboration and being open.
Yeah.
So openness and meritocracy wins.
Experimentation, right? The ability to just say, hey, let's try something out.
But bringing your competitors in and talking and working out together, the hive mind wins.
Yeah.
Right?
We can all do really well.
Yeah.
Rising tide lifts all boats, right?
That's so that mentality, like some of these consortia things are an attempt to do that, but it's still too much monetization first, right? Versus getting it right.
John loves consortia.
We need like a consortium rant counter on our episodes, because
I participate in these things and they're slow moving. It's just because we're hampered with the legal groups mostly in these companies. It's the main problem. So
it's always legal or IT, sometimes procurement, but
I can see him slowing down a lot because you have too many engineers in the room too.
But. We also are very good at overcomplicating, over designing.
Over engineering is our skill set too.
Also playing who's the smartest guy in the room just to say that I'm the smartest guy in the room. But
alpha geeks are
it gets even worse when you combine an alpha geek and an alpha engineer into one person. But it's it's crazy to me that the tech industry has had all these consortiums that have spun out so much great things that literally impact everyone's day or life on a daily basis. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, USB, those three right out of the gate, right? Like everything is better because of those things. We don't really have that equivalent in oil and gas.
Well, I'll say WITSML is not.
I was going to say WITS and like the EDR is really the first and only thing. But even then,
we bring that up and it's just like, is it just Stockholm syndrome? Like that's the one thing we can point out, like that it's not even people don't even like it that much. It's just
okay. So,
but it's actually a standard that we can use.
Well, once they get off its soap, it stops sucking as much.
Yeah.
So WebSocket, ETP is a good thing. But why call it ETP? Why not just call it WebSocket?
Yeah.
Like it's like we have to put new verbs and make it complicated.
Or we have to get And that's the other thing too. Like Bobby and I have had this conversation a number of times, is it's like, who cares what the data format, the final data format is, as long as the data is structured in this, like the data structure is way more important.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's XML, JSON, like whatever text, it doesn't matter, because the data science, the person on the end of it can figure out how to map it. It just needs to be a structured, repeatable.
I can get the same thing every time. I can do something with it.
Right.
Well, getting so they're here. We're getting to some like right now, like OPC-UA versus Sparkplug B, right? I don't know if y'all are following that kind of stuff. OPC-UA has been around forever, right? It's got over engineering things in it, but it's what a lot of these devices use, right? And the OPA is tied to OPC-UA formats, and the new DM thing is an attempt to clean this up. But yeah, it's how do you do stuff in flight and not break things?
Yep.
And so additive engineering processes where I can make changes safely, that's what you need to, that's what, going back to cloud native, I want to be able to add new services without impacting current things till we get it right, and then be able to roll it out cleanly. That's what this whole edge ops things can do. But the Sparkplug B guys, like they're more midstream right now. So like CirrusLink, Arlen Nipper, if you know these guys, have done a great job using that format, and it's now donated to the Eclipse IoT. And so I think it's a much more simple, much more clean architecture. And so it's easier to, like, you don't have the cognitive load of OPC Foundation, all of its concerns.
Yeah.
And Sparkplug B is a canonical way of getting the data shape that everyone can agree to and can do like the UNS stuff.
Right.
So, I think we're looking to support both. Well, we are through partners. We support both today,
right?
And we have our own MQTT that no one uses, but that's okay. But most people use Mosquito or a version of Mosquito for that component. But getting the mediation layer cleaned up and make it easy to do integration. Like I would always say, it's like $1 million per integration endpoint, right? We can get that down, and we've got a partner we're working with called Litmus.io now, who does a good job. We have MageCon Data Broker supported on Red Hat now, so they can run as a bare metal OPC-UA broker. They have a containerized UBI container running on us, and now they've built an OpenShift operator too. So I have this full spectrum of how I want to run my OPC-UA process with Red Hat. So we've been targeting all these new OT vendors that if you're going to containerize stuff, we're going to be there to help you.
Yeah, sure.
If you want to modernize and clean up your tech debt here and make it easier to consume and spin up, make it all declarative deployments and automated deployments, we'll be there to support you.
Yeah. I think one other big thing in this space, talking to all you operators out there, Bobby, you included, is nothing will change until the operators require it, right? And so having operators, and this is finally starting to happen, right? Like out of the gate, it was, okay, well, we're going to need you to be able to stream some on the ops side, at least. We're going to need you to stream your data, right? Like that's slowly been working its way into contracts and procurement and stuff like that. But the next step is, okay, not only do we need the data, but we need you to talk to each other, and the data needs to communicate with the other dozen service providers that are also on the location who are providing us data as well. And by the way, reminder, this is still all our data. I know you generate it, but it is our data, and therefore it needs to be as open and interactive across different platforms, companies, data structures, and stuff as we can get it. And I think that is one of the main reasons that a lot of our consortiums don't end up that well, is because there are plenty of operators in it, but there's also a lot of service companies in it that have their own agendas, and everyone has to make money. And so there's all these conflicting kind of incentives almost that never end up working out very well.
Well, it's part of this is going back to the realization all companies are software companies, right? Yeah. And oil and gas still thinks they're a drill bit company in some cases. Drill bits are very important. I love drill bits, but ultimately there's not a unique differentiation there. Organizations that, now I'll say this and not trying to get in trouble, but how much you spend on SAP, I think determines how much you think of software. So
that's that's true.
So if you don't value software, you don't invest properly.
Yeah.
I hear all these organizations that run around saying they're agilists now. They fundamentally don't get it still. Yeah. It's like they're not really building things for them. they're still leveraging other people's stuff. So you're beholden to them.
Yep.
But that's the market, right? It's the reality of it. Some organizations are differentiating. There's some people are owning their own assets, and they're gaining they're going to be leaner, meaner, tougher. They're going to be able to deal with when it goes back down to 40 or under.
Yeah. Well, right? And I mean, it's just one of those things too. Like, put yourself in the client's shoes. If you're an operator and you can choose option A, which doesn't have an integration with whatever on-site vendor that you're using, or option B, which does have an integration with on-site vendor, and they're the same price or close to it, why wouldn't you go with the one that has the integration just to make your life easier, right? Like the just the mindset behind a lot of the reasons why people aren't, collaborating and opening APIs up and stuff are just kind of archaic and old, in all honesty. And as this starts to become the expectation in the industry, then more and more people will do it. They're going to be forced to do it.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing it. It's slow, as with most innovation in the oil field, but it is happening. Speaking of kind of partnerships and stuff, I know y'all had a couple press releases within the last week or so. I wanted to hit on the Intel ECI and then also the guys one. I'm really interested in that one because my background, obviously, but wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah, so this was Intel Innovation was earlier this week, and we had a few. I don't know when this will be released, but
probably a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so just whatever today is, September or something. But Intel Innovation, we had a couple things aligned there. Intel's a big partner of us. The space we're in, the Canon, was started by us and Intel together to support the OSDU community, right? And but we launched Guys AI is a partner of ours. They're in the Accelerated by Intel program, and they've designed an Edge Ops platform that allows you to deploy to Red Hat Device Edge a containerized workload without having to have real skills there. So it's a easy button, a GUI, as it were.
It's like a low code for, is it
basically I can commission, I can set up locations and add devices to it, and then commission and deploy workloads to it without opening up a CLI at all.
And they're kind of framing that focused on some of these edge use cases.
Yeah, so
computer vision, and
their background is they were like a computer vision shop, and so they would build a custom CD image for you. So they have if you go to Red Hat catalog for containers, they've got like an age engender thing, and they've got a apparel logo thing.
Yeah,
they do car logos. So some basic things just to show off their capabilities.
Right.
But then they can come in and build like a flare monitoring solution or a safety PPE thing or whatever, right? And so they were deploying on Pis, Raspberry Pis, and using Balena OS, and they couldn't get any of the security stuff done properly. So now they're using Ansible, and they're deploying to Red Hat Device Edge, and they're using Quay as their container registry. But they've built this nice tool on top of it
that just handles
does all the security out for you, so you don't have to be an expert there. So it really lowers the bar to using Red Hat infrastructure. But you could be like a Windows guy or VMware skilled guy that just likes to click on GUIs, and you can do that now with this partner platform.
That's sweet.
So it simplifies edge deployments at scale.
No, I mean, I think that's a big. I talk about a lot when we talk about edge, but the ideas are there, but there's all these kind of nuances that apply to edge, especially in oil and gas, where you've got limited connectivity, you've got ruggedized weather connectivity, you've got people on site, you've got different vendors, different data sources, all this stuff. But the ability to manage and deploy to these disparate locations and stuff, like we talked about earlier, it's one of the last things that people like really think about, right? It's like, oh, well, I've got it stood up and, in our lab on this test thing, or over at the Chevron, in the Canon at the Chevron lab, and it's running here. But okay, well, how do I manage that when I have 1,000 of them out in the field, and they all have various levels of connectivity and different networks and all this stuff? So it's really cool that you guys have that. And I'm personally, most of the applications we were looking at when I was at HiveCell, in the oil and gas space, a good number of them were really around computer vision, whether like you mentioned, flaring. I mean, that's a huge one, right? Being able to,
but I guess like someone drives on location,
right.
Like
Safety.
We talk about stuff like water haulers, like you pick up like their sticker to see what company it was, and then see what time they were in and out.
Your service contract confirmations.
I've been saying this for damn near a decade now, but like your entire frac, all the logistics and stuff around your materials, your chemicals, your sand, all the stuff that is constantly moving on a frac site that is still very archaically done through MOB tickets and physical pieces of paper. It's like, hey, the trailer leaves the sand mine, it gets weighed on a scale. It's got a QR code on the door and a RFID tag, and when it leaves the site, it now knows that this vehicle has left the site and it weighs this much, has this much sand in it. It's going to this other location. If you've got a camera or a reader on that site, you now know when it arrives, you know how much sand is there. You can then force that directly into whatever database and then draw off of it. Like you could automate your entire logistics for all of that stuff just with some basic computer vision stuff.
Yeah. The use cases for CV is amazing.
Yeah.
And predictive maintenance, the end of telemetry offer, your pumps and your compressors.
Even like some HS&E stuff too. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, people on location, like that's another big one, right? Is like if, you know, you're on a frac job or a drilling site and there is a catastrophic event and the well blows out or there's an explosion or there's a fire or whatever, there's still not a great way other than get to the mustard station and go through the list of people on the JSA to know how many people were, like what happens if the whole thing blows up and no one's out there to notify people, to know who was there or
things
who
could be
left.
on fire. People don't know. So a simple camera, and these things are the cost of this has really come down.
Commoditized.
Yep.
Yeah, it's getting very reasonable.
I mean, look what we got in our hands. I mean, like,
well, I mean, these, and there's like with LiDAR and all these emission, things, IR things, and
well, and especially now we're even talking about, we got a new ESG specialist. I mean, the IRA stuff. I mean, so if you're you show how you're mitigating, and then also, I'm sure it's not there yet.
The rules
some things
are
that are
coming.
acceptable, but like the rules are coming. But then what? Oh, sorry about that.
Rules are coming.
Your
carbon.
But
what they're going to allow you to do, like, because like right now people still have to go out and do an inspection, but I think it's coming soon where like they're going to allow technology to count as an inspection.
We've got customers doing it already. Some people were proactive in this space around the emission stuff.
Yep.
So like I said, we're do projects in LF Climate where we build stuff more for FIS customers to like score their ETF portfolios for carbon risk.
Sure.
Right? That's part of the Goldman, Chase, these kind of guys. But that same data, we've built this OS Climate project, which can be used by energy companies to share information and data about their ESG standpoints. So, these things are scanning all the 10Ks, looking for carbon problems and building portfolios off of that.
Right.
We've got Airbus now contributing their models and their ESG stances into it. And that's a project where we would love to get more oil and gas guys, like the Open Footprint project line there a little bit. But there's this data science stuff for computer vision. There's so much value to be had. That's low hanging fruit right now. The problem is scaling it out, and managing it without.
Well, they don't even. No one knows the problem because they haven't gotten to that point yet, right? Like, and that's
some folks are doing it, but they run into bricking the device problem to keep it patched, or they don't know how to do the disconnected stuff, so lights out type operations.
Yep.
So how to do repo syncs and stuff like that, we can help with.
You bring up data science. I mean, like, why should someone as a data scientist or in data analytics, why should I care about Red Hat? It's just an operating system, right? I mean, even like, so what do you guys offer that is important in this space?
So we've got a few things here. So we've been running like on the Kubernetes. I mean, you don't need Kubernetes to run data science. So the inferencing on a Red Hat device edge is a perfect secure platform for doing it. Now we can all those immutable things we talked about.
Yeah.
But we've also put in certain packages working with Intel for their like OpenVINO is in there. One API support's in there.
Okay.
So I can use the GPU to accelerate things. And we do work with NVIDIA too. So we've got a GPU operator that runs on OpenShift. So all the NVIDIA goodness works too. And we're working on like Orn IGX boxes.
Okay.
So for, more edge style things for, I need a GPU in the field.
And you said y'all also work on ARM as well as Intel, right? So,
yeah. We love Intel. We love NVIDIA as well. And, we love TI, love Qualcomm. We're a big happy family here. So, we want to be able to like enable Red Hat on all these devices.
Agnostic.
And like I said, we're working in the RISC-V community as well. So, and that's an interesting one. I think that will not challenge ARM, but force ARM to clean up some things.
Yeah.
So we're targeting, system ready 8 type stuff with our work right now. It's all in the upstream, but we've got it booting. Like I've got the Advantech box working.
Okay, yeah.
So but in any case, there's basically we need to be able to map the whole breadth of the compute for Edge. So Edge is these Atom class Celeron box or core boxes in a lot of cases, but the ARM stuff is more for these low power use cases.
Yep.
And so be able to we're not going to do pies, but hardened pies would maybe, because Fedora 38 runs on Pi.
Yeah.
But we're not going to support it. But we're going to be able to do these things that are more ruggedized, fanless boxes, and be able to, like, just like these phones are converging all types of apps. The idea is we can converge a bunch of apps through container technology.
Right.
And so I'll need to add another box for every use case.
Yeah.
So put enough beefiness out there on an edge node and run multiple workloads.
Yep.
So
I wanted to ask, before we get to the kind of speed round, tell everybody a little bit more about what you guys are doing with the lab over here and the Chevron guys and that whole setup. Because one of the reasons DW exists is because the energy industry doesn't talk enough about the cool stuff that they're doing. And I had the opportunity to go with you on a tour a couple weeks ago, and I was shocked at how much cool stuff y'all had and just the setup in general and you're much more knowledgeable about it. So I'll let you speak on it, but just talk about kind of, who it's designed for, what they need to do to be able to come in and test and do all that stuff.
Well, you can Google to find out. We have a landing page on our website. You just search Intelligent Edge Solution Center, and you can find me that way. But I'm Archer at Red Hat if you want to find out more about it. But overall, so credit to Chevron. They invested here way before we did, right? They started building their makerspace there. And so they're there testing 5G stuff out, Starlink, type things. But then all these sensors. I was
going to say they have that whole sensor.
They have a whole
which
sensor.
I had no idea, right?
Like LoRaWAN and Wi-Fi sensors for all kinds of upstream and downstream use cases. And so, Chris Millett and Paul Wachowski over there run that space. I work with a lady named Jeanette Martinez. So they're willing to they'll let anyone come in there and see what they're working on.
Okay.
And so you want to set up a tour, ping me and I get Jeanette will help us.
Yeah.
And you can see all the fun toys over there, but they've built an AR, VR, XR lab over there. They have a robotics lab.
I was going to say they've got
the aquatics center. They're adding that building that used to do the Van Gogh thing is now becoming an aquatics lab for them. And, but yeah, Chevron's investing to help them innovate quicker. Right. Our connection with them is through the OSDU. And so we're OSDU members. I'm the focal point in the OSDU. And my focus has been OSDU Edge.
Right.
And so, and this is really focused on production APIs, which are now finally starting to show up in the OSDU community. It's been focused on seismic and well log.
Yeah,
finally. And there's a bunch of contributors working on it, and it's exciting because so now, getting into the production domain is really now how we can have a wider, a bigger impact for OSDU
for sure,
for people that are trying to do like remote valve control.
Yep, sure.
Understand, tying this to trading might start showing up.
Yeah.
So we can actually start impacting the business because
everything's
been
accounting,
ESG, production forecasting,
right? Like
production, all the business side of production is now being API driven, which is for folks using Aries or these older production Avoset type stuff. Now we're finally starting to modernize that in the USD community. So it's we've been kind of waiting for it. We did have a remote valve thing that Intel and Exxon built that we had running there. So Modbus control, to do valve control, but and then tied that to inductive automation SCADA. So that's in there running there today.
Yeah.
But we're bringing all these other OT workloads that are they're mostly energy focused, but it's retail and some other verticals we're addressing too. So, but anyone's welcome to come in, do the tour. We're there to set up to do innovation. We can do workshops, do POCs, pilots. We have hardware available for use. So we have hardware from OnLogic, Advantech, and Intel for edge devices and some of the Novo gear too.
So if you're developing software for Edge or for Oilfield, this is the perfect playground for you to come and experiment, show it off, learn, get direct feedback from a major oil and gas operator. Like I said, it's one of those really one of those things, just like a lot of stuff that we do. It's really cool. It's really fascinating. It's opens a lot of opportunity, but hardly ever gets talked about. So I wanted to bring it up.
We're
just because
our doors have been open for a little bit, and we're still, trying to figure out how to leverage it the right way. Yeah. And we've done quite a few workshops with customers. We've had a few open events through Consortia, and but we're if y'all want to come check it out and work with us, we've got a stocked candy store over here.
Yeah.
So
it's it's one of the biggest things, right? When you're with a lot of early energy startups, is it's like, hey, I've got this idea because I came from whatever background and I know there's this problem in this space, but I don't have a place to go test my sensor or this software in a pseudo production environment or in a lab environment. Even just being able to have a spot to go test it, because it's like, you developed this software that runs, it's this machine learning model. Well, you need inputs from sensors to run the model, but you don't have any sensors, and if you're a startup and you have no money, you can't go buy them. Yeah. And so
simulators only go so far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's I love that we have these things and we're getting more and more of them. And I like I said, I just want to give as much exposure to that as possible, because it's a great resource.
I love to see y'all guys over there more playing around. So it's I think the community needs, there's the makerspace Chevron's built, all these, like Exxon's got its digital garage, and BP's got something like this, but they're the first ones doing it in kind of an open community way.
Right.
So that openness, again, is critical to knowledge share and to have the information spread more quickly.
Yeah.
So, but kudos to Chevron for doing this. And we built a what I call a visual inspection demo it's really just detecting if the beer label is applied properly. So they sponsored us for that spot, and we used that at our user conference as a way to show off a way to kill Mettler Toledo devices. I don't know, but in any case, it's I really just want to get all the equipment to build my own brewery. That's what I'm really trying to do. So
you're halfway there. You got the bottling stuff, right?
But I've got a line of sight on all the vendors now.
Yeah.
So. But it's a good space for the MTC at Microsoft has a good space too for doing community events, but the Canon does as well.
Yeah.
So if folks should be aware of the Canon, and Canon's done a great job. They're spread out across the city now pretty well.
Yeah.
And so really like working with those guys too.
It's cool. We got 5 minutes left, so we're going to jump into the kind of speed round for you.
Okay.
Any last minute things we didn't touch on you think people need to know about?
Well, I didn't think I really gave you the proper. I talked about guys. I don't really talk about the Intel OPA thing so the Intel ECI announcement that came out. I wrote a blog like 3 years ago about, hey, we're going to start working on this, and we were learning about OPAF, and Exxon will say they've been working on it for 13 years, but the OPAF started 5-6 years ago, and but really what we were trying to do is start doing open test bed. So over here, we're going to build a test bed and allow people to come in and check it out.
Yeah.
And so Exxon's been doing this with Yokogawa for a few years. And Yokogawa is doing a great job and has built a lot of great IP for them, but we want to try to open it up.
Right.
And so, and figure out how we can go faster and make a better product.
Right.
And so, so that's something what we've announced here. So the Intel ECI framework is a reference architecture to build an OPAS style test bed.
Okay.
So we've been working with Schneider, working with Yokogawa, and we're open to working with anyone who wants to come play with us.
Cool.
But trying to build open interoperable process controls is the stated goal here. Help do best of breed on a converged device. Be able to have Rockwell, Honeywell, Schneider, Emerson.
Just make it agnostic.
Yeah, basically process control has been kind of proprietary, locked in silos, right? There's a lot of value in opening up things, right? Not like the mediation layer is one thing, but the ability to just, like I said earlier, treat the OT assets like IT assets.
Plug and play.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And make it easy. Like make this standards. Like there's I remember I used to go to the SLC meetings. I don't know if I remember those things. Like it was back before, it was like Energistics and Mimosa and all these guys. And the push was to make energy more like Southwest Airlines, right? like one jet, one motor,
easy to work on. Like
know how to do the maintenance.
and you can fix it.
It's the same idea. You get much more operational efficiency to your business and better margins.
Right.
If you have a predictable known path and you don't increase the cognitive load, you reduce the cognitive load. So, and you have better documented processes and it's more predictable.
Yeah,
sure.
So, and that's ultimately that's what we're trying to get to with the OT side. So more downstream use cases in refineries and chemical plants. But the idea is you allow chemical engineers to experiment. They can do data science versus just hit a button.
Okay.
Right? So being able to do safe experimentation in this environment is the idea. I could put my Python code on the actuator as close as I can and impact the business, like improve the yield or reduce the cost of the process.
Right.
There's a very exciting thing that just came out. Microsoft has been working on protein folding models. So kind of like a stable diffusion idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that can be used for catalyst chemical creation as well. So who's doing that in oil and gas, right? So I'm excited about the protein folding because of health reasons, but seeing it applied in different ways to do material science on, what have been well-established DuPont OE cycles for years, and to, start improving what's been a very kind of, mature process to look for new ways of doing things and create new materials.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is, I want to work on that.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah. So it's called EvoDiff in case y'all.
Okay.
So it's open source model for Microsoft. So props to Microsoft here. So
and I mean they've done a great job of making themselves. They were the anti-open source, and then like all of a sudden, like overnight,
they became a better Red Hatter. Is the way I look at it.
No, I mean like how they bought GitHub, and I mean they were even when they bought it, I think they were like the largest contributor on GitHub. I mean like,
well, a lot of people were like, why are they buying GitHub? This doesn't make sense. And then I remember, you might have told me that, but I remember hearing that and being like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah. I when I was Java guy, I remember the days of gray APIs, right?
Yeah.
Where they had their own APIs they didn't document and they published APIs that were different, slower to hurt their competition. Of
course.
Right? I'd like to think they aren't going to do that again, but overall, I think Microsoft's become a great advocate for open source.
Yeah.
And really, if we're all just focused on the customer and the outcomes they care about, this will all get solved.
Yeah, 100%.
So there's all kinds of new things coming out with all this generative stuff.
Yeah.
Red Hat. One thing I did want to mention, we've got generative tools in Ansible now and OpenShift. So we have something called Ansible Lightspeed, which will generate playbooks for you.
That's really cool.
So you can you can reduce the cost of your Ansible dev with this tool, and it's built off we have a huge community of Ansible playbooks called Galaxy.
Okay.
So anything you want to automate, there's LAN party whole setups in there, but there's like I want to configure all the Wi-Fi in my SD-WAN,
right?
Or I want to deploy my whole suite of applications.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So all that's been trained on those Galaxy playbooks, and it's all. But what we're doing though is explainable AI,
right?
Mm-hmm. So showing the sources,
very important.
So the ethics is a lot easier to disseminate.
Yeah.
If you're showing the source.
Yeah.
And that's one big problem with all this LLM stuff.
Yeah, big time.
People are kind of hiding. Well, what's really bad right now is all the data usage policies being updated behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A little sketchiness there.
But you clicked accept.
Yeah, you did. You totally just gave us everything.
You definitely read all of the terms of service.
T's and C's.
Yeah, and conditions.
Yeah. Well, thank God we have all the European commissioners
reading the truth.
Reading it, not us. So.
So I mean, I guess we're probably going to jump into that. Yeah. I think the open source stuff was probably a good segue into one of the speed round questions. So what's your favorite open source library or repo?
Cool. Well, for energy stuff, the Equinor has done a great little seismic utility. I wrote a little blog on it, but it's for oil and gas stuff, there's like Welly, use that.
Sure.
And that was a good one. But the Statoil seismic one I really like.
Yeah, that's really good.
What about non-oil and gas, just in general?
Oh, good Lord. Well, there's so much.
I know.
So, I mean, I've been playing a lot with Pi-hole. So I don't know if y'all remember Pi-hole. So it's a little utility for running a proxy at your house. And
nice.
You do the at-home stuff, Home Assistant.
Sure.
So that stuff's fun to play with.
Yeah.
And I do play with Belina too. I'll admit to that. So it's okay. So, and, but that's become a little mixture of commercial versus open source. But I do a lot of weather stuff too. So I have like 3 weather stations in my backyard. So I'm like, my wife always jokes you should have been a weatherman or something like that. But
you can never be wrong if you're a weatherman. It doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Or a reservoir engineer.
And last night I was playing with a thing to export out the air tags off your phone and share it, because that's all locked down to an individual. That little project that does that.
That's pretty cool.
So this Edge Loaner program we have has air tags in them.
Okay.
And there's commercial versions of this, but the air tags are a lot cheaper. So,
yeah.
So I can share out the air tag data.
Yeah, that's awesome.
With that project. But I really geeking out about EvoDiff right now. So the EvoDiff thing I mentioned about the stable diffusion for protein folding. So it's I'm dealing with a rare non-Hodgkin lymphoma, so it's a little self-preservation.
Sure,
like
no, that's
so.
But again, but you talk about like when you do things that matter to you, or like
that's
where your passion can actually drive.
I'm very interested in how Johnson & Johnson runs their GPU operators.
Yeah.
So and if they're using EvoDiff yet or have,
there you go.
It's still not peer reviewed, but the idea of it is you don't have to sequence the amino acids the same way. But it's like the goal is the shape of protein, so it binds to this protein.
Okay.
And so I'm a MD Anderson lab rat right now.
Yeah.
Where they're trying out they're targeting 3 proteins on my I have mantle cell lymphoma, it's called, and those proteins are being bound by this new drug.
Okay.
And this is all based upon the COVID mRNA mechanisms
Okay.
for how drug discovery can be done quickly. But this is a big little leapfrog step.
Wow.
In the computing you have to do to come up with these drugs.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So drug discovery stuff is kind of cool to me.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I think the people like to kind of shit on AI a lot for, it's just like the language models, right? It's just regurgitate. It's a search engine, right? It's just regurgitating what it found statistically to be the best answer or whatever. But where you really see some incredible AI use cases, especially in the edge space, is around like the medical field, right? Like one of the examples I used at HiveCell was, they did a study. I think it was Johns Hopkins or one of the big universities did a study of, right, well, at what percentage rate could doctors by themselves diagnose breast cancer?
Yeah.
What percentage rate could an AI, computer vision, diagnose it? And they were basically comparable. I want to say the doctors were slightly higher than the AI was. But then they did a third test where it was AI or doctor assisted AI. So both of them in tandem, and it went from like 80-ish%, I believe, up to over 90%, which it's literally tens of millions of people a year get early diagnosis, or it gets caught, or it's treatable versus full on. And so it's I think again, everybody gets caught up on the automation side, but the first part of the automation step is this human controlled or human assisted AI.
Yeah.
Right?
Assistant AIs are I think everyone's so scared, is this going to replace my job kind of thing.
No.
And really it's another tool. And
well, if it does, you're not very good at
your
job.
Better
Right.
so my mom was a radiologist. Like she used to, run, very, very manual, slow process. But yeah, we've run that model.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a Stanford one for skin cancer too.
Yep.
But the problem is the FDA is blocking it being used. Right. So it's like we have these tools, but the business models and the legal stuff is preventing a lot of the usage to impact better outcomes for patients.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to get into all that mess. So.
I'm kidding.
2 more or so?
Yeah. What is your favorite book or most interesting book you've read recently, and favorite kind of follow on LinkedIn, Twitter, social?
Okay. Yeah. So favorite book all the time. Well, I can go Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson, but Cryptonomicon too. I'm a big Neil Stephenson fan. So, so I haven't The Fall was I haven't read his very last book, but are y'all familiar with Neil?
No.
Okay. You need to read Neil Stephenson.
Okay.
So the whole idea of like VR came out of Snow Crash, right?
Interesting.
So like virtual worlds, all that stuff. But Cryptonomicon is like 3 stories. There's some reality in it. So it's like the Enigma engine from World War II being solved.
Interesting.
And there's Alan Turing's in the book.
Okay.
But it's also crypto. So, and then he wrote this one series and needed a freaking editor. It was like each book was like 1,000 words or 1,000 pages, and the Baroque cycle. So if you got through the Baroque cycle, you're a real Neil Stevens fan.
Yeah.
But it was really talking about the beginning of banking and currency and stuff like that. So Neil Stevenson's my favorite author. But I'm reading right now is Team Topologies. Is really, you probably heard me say cognitive load 500 times here. Probably because I'm reading this book.
Yeah.
But it's really talking about how you design teams to get the right balance on the cognitive load.
Okay.
And how you design for flow.
Yeah.
How product flow should go. And so
I bet that's interesting. I bet that's fascinating.
Actually. It's great. We have a group of Red Hat. We have this thing called our Innovation Labs, and they've built a whole library of Open Practice Library. It's called. So for folks that know about the Open Practice Library, it's really the mechanisms for how an effective team should run.
Right.
How you build software. And Team Topologies is a book recommended by that group. So shout out to Matt Tanaki for that. So
cool.
So, but favorite LinkedIn follow.
Or Twitter, just in general, whether it's energy, tech.
I follow Wade Phillips, so he's a son of Baum, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, actually his sister was my social studies teacher.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So like I remember like at the time he was coaching the Bills and Doug Flutie was there, so she had her box of Flutie Flakes.
That's
and
awesome.
I was like,
Yeah, I ran it. So I went to a wedding in Youngstown, Ohio, just a few weeks ago. Right when the Hall of Fame game was.
Okay, yeah.
And Wayne Phillips was right on my plane.
That's funny.
So I got to sit there and talk to him and his wife.
That's really cool.
It was really awesome because I'm Earl Campbell.
Oh yeah.
I'm old. So, but Wade Phillips is he was there he had I think 3 players he had coached.
Okay.
Were going in, Aware from Cowboys and a couple of, I can't remember the other ones, but it was like I know he's coaching the Gamblers. So I don't know if y'all remember Houston Gamblers, like when Jim Kelly,
USFL,
Jim Kelly Gambler days, and so, but Wade Phillips is, he's coached everywhere, every type of environment.
Yep.
I was happy, even though it was Peyton Manning, but when Broncos won with him, follow Wade Phillips, and here's a bunch of geeky stuff I follow.
Sure,
but I'd rather talk about Wade Phillips.
Fair enough,
for sure. One more, or you good? What's quickly? What's the most exciting thing you're seeing or you're excited about in the energy tech edge space? It doesn't have to be edge specifically, but energy tech or edge.
Well, so there's a few things that are interesting. I'm getting more onto the utilities grid side. Like nothing against oil and gas, stuff like that, but our grids are old.
Yeah.
Right? They need, like, we can't do the renewables without improving the grids. There's a project in LF Energy called Everest, which is an EV charging station that's fully open source. That I'm trying to get us to pull in. There's one called CPath over there. A couple like ADM SDR stuff. And, but yeah, I think investment in the grid and having all the renewables, it's really a big focus on transmission that we need a 3x improvement in this.
Yeah.
We need a 200x improvement in CCUS. Like we're just like, I'm thinking about my kids a little bit, right? And particularly after this summer, like it kind of like, okay, this is
floating on the edge there a few times.
Yeah, we are getting dangerously warmish here.
Yeah,
and I know it'll be in the fact that it snowed 5 times in the last snowing in Houston is also not good.
Yeah,
right. So like I've had to rip out all my plants, all my like I don't know where to go. Do I buy for hot or buy for cold?
No, yeah, I mean they've been run by both.
One.
I mean
like Moon Valley is taking all my money, so it's like I'm trying to keep green things green. And it's hard right now.
Rock garden.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna start looking like Phoenix here.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Desert plants are we had a desert sage bush at my last house, and if I wanted to try to kill it, I couldn't. And I'm convinced anytime I'm going to have to replace stuff at our house now in Katy, it's going to be with desert sage because it's super robust and it's really when it rains, it blooms really pretty purple flowers. And when it doesn't, you can cut it back and it doesn't need a ton of water. And it's just a nice, healthy thing. But it's such a huge pain in the ass because you're right. It's like, well, my grass is dead now because it hasn't had any water in 6 months. My grass was dead in the winter because it snowed.
The climate change stuff is, like we participate in the COP, right? With that whole thing. And there's a guy named Bill Wright at Red Hat who's trying to drive like climate change projects at scale, like through the UN. So he's flew over to Tanzania to like help, like they don't have an alerting system for when it floods over there. And so like very basic things out in Africa we take for granted, they don't have. And so we're trying to like do stuff with like bee health. So there's an organization called Enterprise Neurosystem that Red Hat's in, where we're trying to do federated learning globally. And a lot of it's weather stuff, so IBM had all these weather projects.
Yeah.
They donated a lot of that. They made a big donation to Hugging Face with these weather models.
Nice.
And so, but we're now doing acoustics on the bees. And we're trying to do stuff with like oyster beds and clam beds. Those are early indicators of these climate things.
Right. Okay.
So we have to monitor that more effectively to know at the macro level how we're doing.
Sure.
Right. And some that's like, pollution to waterways and stuff like that. So, I like the fish, and, CCA could get more involved here if they want to. So like Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, and those schools. So one thing I've been working on, we have something called Red Hat Research, where we like teach graduate students how to code, how to use open source. Yeah. And like we did Baylor students over in Brno, Czechia a few years ago. So trying to expand that to have oil and gas companies like sponsor students and use that for like an ingest for talent through Red Hat Research. And so we have open source projects. You do your senior thesis with us.
That's cool.
And you learn how to build things. We'll teach you how to code and stuff like that, and how to use Git and how to use Tecton, containers and all this stuff. But if you want to be a driver guy, be a driver guy. But doing this with more targeted stuff, like in these type of projects, you can get a lot of data. We do a lot of data science out of Boston University and Boston College. And there's other, like we've done some schools in Sweden now, but we haven't really got it going here in Texas yet. So OSU has a university outreach program we're trying to light up. There's an open source version of OSU in the GitLab now. Okay. So it's not tied to a commercial offering. Right. And I think it's a way to get the university program going on these production APIs.
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
So looking for all the university guys listening here to ping me about that. So,
well, that's a perfect segue. Where can they find you? How do they ping you?
Yeah. So Archer at Red Hat's my email, and you can come in Canon anytime and get me. I am Twitter, but I don't, that's
Twitter and LinkedIn.
Twitter's Archer J. Yeah. And, LinkedIn is /Archer.
And then I assume Red Hat, you'll have a Edge section on the website as well.
RedHat.com has an Edge. Just search Red Hat Device Edge. Yeah. Search that Intelligent Solution Center. Intelligent Edge Solution Center is the name of what we call this office, because it's not a real Red Hat office. Right. It's a lab. Yeah. But it's really a showcase for partners, is what it ends up being.
Do you have a blog too? Or no?
I do, but it's on Medium and it's old. So, but
so do I. I haven't updated it in years.
I did like 3, and during COVID and I stopped.
Yeah. Every now and then I occasionally just post Pi-hole stuff or Welly stuff on there. And
it is amazing that like when you haven't done, I don't know anything for like 2 or 3 years, and like someone's like just reaches out because
you get
helped or hey, can you help me do this?
Yeah, you get another follow or a like or a comment on it. You're like, man, I haven't thought about that in literally years. And there's still people finding it.
Photomat used to come to the HCHUG meetings. The guy started WordPress, right? He used to live here.
Okay,
yeah, I knew he was from
Houston. So Matt, he's Bay Area now, but so I, the WordPress tools are great, but I blog through Red Hat stuff sometimes, but when I do my own stuff, it's Medium.
Yeah, gotcha.
And Red Hat has a podcast too. I wanted to mention too.
Yeah.
So one called Code Comments. It's a kind of like a partner driven thing.
Okay.
We used to have OpenShift.tv, which it's now Red Hat something. So we do Twitch live streaming.
Oh, nice.
For like developer content.
It's really smart, actually.
Yeah, it's on YouTube too. Yeah. But using Twitch as a platform for like, we'll do live coding things on there. So if you go to developer.redhat.com, you can spin up an OpenShift cluster and try it out. And we have a bunch of like tutorials and stuff. So if you're a developer, want to get hands-on, developer.redhat's a good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or learn.openshift.com is another good site too.
Yeah.
So, but
we shoot you an email.
Yeah. Or shoot me an email and I'll send you whatever you want.
There you go.
So,
John, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, this has been great.
Yeah.
Look forward to doing this again sometime.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys at Fuse.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that'll be a great event. We had some of our colleagues that went to last year's one. So I had one quick question. Is it indoors all, or is it outdoor and indoors?
It's mostly indoors. We have an outdoor exhibition area where people have equipment. I think we actually we're supposed to be having some kind of drone tech come. So
cool.
I think they'll be letting people
we haven't been
see
able
that
to
outside.
bring many drones too. I remember going to OTC and you could do helicopter flights back in the day.
Yeah.
But it's been a while. So,
well, cool, man. I appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks for having me.